Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tonight, I have something extra special for you. The great Risa Simon is back with us tonight to talk about a new mobile app for kidney patients called Donor Seeker. As you will recall from our first broadcast with Risa, she's a preemptive kidney transplant recipient, a patient advocate and mentor, a published author, and the creator of TransplantStrong.com's powerful new donor seeker app. As president of Simon Says Seminars, Risa Simon, Simon Says Seminars and Transplant First Academy, she's undertaken great strides to pay back the community with her unstoppable desire to empower kidney patients to live their best life possible. The link to that first broadcast is in the comments to this broadcast, and there are many, many other links there, other videos, newspaper articles, awards, YouTube videos, everything you wanted to know about Risa Simon and were afraid to ask. So if you want to drill down, we've got you covered. We are here to talk about tonight is this great new mobile app called Donor Seekers. The app is part of the Donor Seeker program, a 4-part video series designed to help waitlisted patients start attracting living kidney donors in less than 15 minutes. Each lesson offers engaging video examples in both English and Spanish translation. Throughout this series, patients will find examples for face-to-face conversations, social media posts, and written communications to help them share their story about their need for a transplant and the hope to find a living kidney donor. Patients will also be encouraged to build a team to help them expand their search with more confidence and ease. To boost success, patients will be able to access additional information, self-help books, and remember, folks, Risa's written some pretty good books, so you want to check out those books. The links to those are into the comments too, by the way. Self-help books and social media video examples through this program's resource section, which is extensive, and very cool. Risa's mission in developing this program was to positively disrupt the path to transplant by offering a video series that can be watched in English or Spanish in less than 15 minutes. The launch of this new mobile app gives cell phone users access to educational content from any location. The links to download the Donor Series app from the Google Play Store or the Apple Application Store are in the comments to the broadcast. And by the way, all the links that I'm talking about will stream through while we're speaking tonight. So you can check out those links. Please give a warm welcome to a great friend of the show, our friend Risa Simon. Risa, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jim, and thank you so much, my friend. You are so generous with your time and your introductions and just this opportunity to be on your show again. It's great to be back.
Great to have you back. Let's talk a little bit. Well, first of all, did I state everything correctly in the introduction? Was I a good boy?
You were so good that I think we could end the show.
Oh, well, let's not do that. Not quite yet.
Have so much content there, and yes, it was spot on and then some, and thank you so much. I so appreciate you helping us get the word out about the program and the app to help patients find living kidney donors.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm a firm believer in preemptive transplant. So anything we can do to help people find a living donor is all cool with Uncle Jim. So please tell us a little bit about where you grew up and your family history.
Sure. I was born and raised in Southern California, and there's a backstory on that that I think is worth sharing that has to do with struggles and triumphs. And it starts with how my mother and her family arrived into California. You see, my mother and her family were not from California. They weren't even from the United States. They were immigrants from Yugoslavia. And amazingly, miraculously, they escaped Nazi persecution. And, I pinch myself when I talk about this, because it's, to me, a lot of what they went through is the fire in my belly that has me doing what I'm doing today. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. But it's just so amazing that they were able to come to the United States, and they entered the United States on the Henry Gibbons, which is the name of a rescue ship that Franklin D. Roosevelt had sent to offer a safe haven to 1,000 refugee survivors during World War II. So Franklin Roosevelt was sympathetic to what was going on with the Nazi, to individuals, to humanity, and he was getting a lot of pressure on one side, and then of course there were a number of people that didn't want him to sympathize with anyone, and Congress and the United States back then, where you think what's happening now is new. It's not new. Immigration was not something that anybody wanted to talk about or handle. There were a lot of people who were very threatened about having immigrants come into this country. So it was such an incredible blessing that they were, my mother, her two brothers, and my grandpa and my grandmother were on the Henry Gibbons. And only reason was my grandpa Joe was a doctor of pharmacy, and my uncle Leon was a composer, a musician, and they were screening. There were thousands of refugees, and only 1,000 were allowed on the ship. In fact, only 987 made it to the U.S., but they had to add value. So basically, they were granted this cross land and sea, ended up in New Jersey, and then took a very long train ride up to Oswego, New York, because Franklin Roosevelt wanted to offer them a safe haven. He wanted to have a gesture of helping these folks. So they stayed in Oswego, New York. And while my mother and her family thought it was a wonderful, happy new beginning, all of a sudden they were given word that they were going to be deported. And again, going back to the immigration laws and the threats of having immigrants into the country. So at that point, they didn't give up. And again, I'm mentioning some of these things because a lot of what we're going to be talking about in fighting for your best life possible is this not giving up. It's the resilience. They didn't give up. They kept petitioning for citizenship. And at the point that Roosevelt, because this is back in 1944, and when Roosevelt passed and Truman took over, he honored the wishes of Roosevelt to make sure that these refugees would be granted citizenship. It was sort of a last effort, if you will, right? So, and then eventually my mother and her family were given an opportunity to select some areas across the United States, and they chose Southern California. So before I'm even in existence, and in California, that's where my mother met my father. And my father was enamored with my mother. She was beautiful, and he was so taken by her resilience and their struggles and how they made it here. But he had no idea that he'd be facing struggles of his own. So back to my father, who was as he was with my mother, not realizing they had a very close relationship with his mother and his father. His mother dies unexpectedly. We know today it had to do with PKD. We didn't know then. And then he is diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease when he's in the Navy. And he's told when he's diagnosed in his early 20s that he's going to die in 20 years. So he's just lost his mother. And now he's told he has polycystic kidney disease and he's going to die in 20 years. I knew nothing about this. Of course, I wasn't born at that time, but I was never told. My brother and I were never told about any of this. And it's interesting whether it kind of through osmosis got into our DNA to not let our guard down. And when we think we have to back down, to double down. And so, unfortunately, my father struggled on dialysis not unlike yours, Jim, and lost the battle in his early 40s. And gosh, I wish, I know you tell some great stories about how you were with your dad. I wish I could have given my dad more time. I wish I could have understood the disease. I wish I could have understood what I know now, what you and I know now. If we knew what we know now back then, how maybe we could have fought for them, how we could have helped them on their journey a bit better. So I have a lot of regret for not doing that. And that fuels my process of creating these tools to help other patients and really to be more proactive, because my brother crashed on dialysis and I all of a sudden realized, hey, you know what, if my mom can make it over here and her family and I could be in existence here, let's see if there's a better way. And so proactive path really was sort of my focus at that point.
Excellent. Let's talk a little bit about your kidney story. Tell us when you were diagnosed and what you were diagnosed with, how that came about.
Yeah. In my early 20s, I was diagnosed. We were told, my brother and I were told, we didn't have the disease. Now, I don't know if we were tested too early because, you know, sometimes these cysts don't manifest until later years. Or as most families say, well, don't tell the kids. There's nothing they can do about it. So don't tell the kids. And I was very surprised. But I mean, I knew later after my dad passed, okay, this is a genetic disease. This is a disease, you know, that kind of does a slow migration and then you kind of plummet. So when I got diagnosed, I was in panic stage, of course, thinking that I was going to follow in my father's footsteps. And of course, I didn't want to do that. And I was kind of just figuring out, you know, what can I do? Well, I could hide under a rock. I pretend I don't have this disease until it actually manifests to a point where it's affecting me. And that ended up happening, as we all know. We've seen the charts. My rose-colored glasses had to come off, and I had to get a little bit more realistic. But I did think I was going to have to be on dialysis. And why did I think that? Because that's all I heard in between the sacred walls of those exam rooms. My doctors, all you hear is dialysis. And, you know, I found that, well, okay, my father didn't have an opportunity to be on PD. Maybe that's so I was just getting all kind of confused in dialysis. And then lo and behold, I decide, you know what, I think I still have a lot to learn here. So I end up going to a conference, the PKD convention for patients. And that just changed my world. Absolutely changed my world.
Okay. Tell us a little bit. I mean, it's my understanding when you're describing your family's history, you lost your father, you lost your grandmother. Your brother did end up on dialysis. Is that correct?
He did, actually twice. He's had 2 transplants and he's doing very well right now because his last one was a living donor. His first one was a deceased donor, and he kind of wrote out the time on that. So, because, you know, he in his late 30s, mid to late 30s, started having some issues where I didn't get my transplant to 54. So, yeah, he ended up on dialysis, but he is now a transplant recipient.
Talk to us about this PKD conference. What did you learn there? What became helpful to you?
I'll tell you, Jim, one of the biggest things, the biggest wake up calls, the aha, the epiphany was a term that was being thrown around: preemptive transplant. What the heck is that? Because I was still just learning about transplant. You know, if you go to any of those kidney 101 classes through your nephrology group practice, there is, it's usually an hour, hour and a half. And I'd say 85% of the time is all on dialysis. At the very end, they talk about transplant. They go, but you know, you got to be on all these medications. They could cause cancer. And if your kidney rejects or doesn't take, you'll be back on dialysis. And you know, a lot of people really like going to the centers because they build a community of friends. So this stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then I go to the seminar and they're going, transplant, living kidney donor, preemptive. You don't need to be on dialysis first. It's like, what a concept. I think many patients, even today, feel that that's the process. Well, it can be the process if they're A, not transplant eligible, or B, they don't have a living kidney donor. And that's a process that takes time, of course. But for me, just learning about, wow, this is a path that I could possibly take. And I could bypass the need for dialysis. And if by chance I needed to be on dialysis, maybe it could be a really short period of time because I'm doing all this work proactively. So I went back and I talked to my nephrologist, and I was talking to a number of nephrologists at that point because I started, while I was learning, I was developing some materials. I used to teach and consult in the dental profession, right? So I just kind of took my skills from dentistry and I kind of molded or blended, I weaved them into the renal profession. I'm like, okay, if I didn't know what I'm learning, and I'm an educator, how many kidney patients don't know this stuff? I mean, I didn't just come out from under a rock, but as you well know, when you get into these areas where patients don't even have real good access to good health care and or have a language barrier, or just a physician that isn't really working for their best interest, it's hard to understand all this stuff. So learning about preemptive, I couldn't wait to get back home to explain to my nephrologist that this was my new plan. He rolled his eyes and said, it's kind of one of those things, we'll see about that. So I realized, all right, I'm obviously a lot more eager about achieving a better and longer life because I saw the stats, I saw the outcomes. I was watching and collecting information, and I thought, this is shameful that I'm not being told, but that's okay. Next, some will, some won't. Next, I need to straighten my path. I need to pull in the resources. And as I mentioned to you before, I was talking to transplant patients informally. So before we even had peer mentoring, as a peer mentor today, I know the value personally because informally, I was able to talk to individuals, one individual in particular that, wow, I mean, just to have someone say, hey, this is what I learned, this is what I did, if I could do it over, this is what I do. And I couldn't take notes quick enough. And it really accelerated my path and empowered. We can go into a doctor's office and sit in the corner and wait for the scary show to start, where the doctor walks in and heads in a chart or a computer, and you're just shivering because you don't know what the news is going to be. Well, today we have portals, we know our labs before we even get there, and we can initiate conversations. And that all in and of itself has just been life-changing. And I'm just really grateful that we have an opportunity, if patients are willing to talk about their situation. And herein lies the real challenge for people. Oh, I'm a private person, I can't really talk about this. How do you get the word out that you hope somebody will donate a kidney to you? So we can talk a little bit about that as we get into the program.
Okay. When we're talking about this PKD meeting, approximately what year was this?
So this was in 2008. And I received my transplant in 2010. So it took me over 2 years to find my ideal donor. I had about 24 people sort of lean into my direction. And what was I doing? I was talking to anyone who would listen. But I wasn't selling things like myself as a good candidate for someone's kidney. I was just speaking from my heart. And I was sharing my situation. When someone asked, "Hey, Risa, how you doing?" Like you opened the show, "Hey, Risa, how you doing?" It's such a easy transition to say, "I'm doing pretty good. I'm hanging in there. I may or may not have told you that I have kidney disease, and I don't know when's the last time I talked to this person, but if it is someone I may or may not have told you that I have kidney disease. Well, unfortunately, it's progressed to a point where my kidneys can no longer function on their own. And my doctor's telling me my best option is to get a transplant, but the wait to get a transplant can be 5 to 10 years, depending on California and New York. I mean, there are areas where it's more than 10 years, or at least 10 years, right? So, and then I'd be on dialysis, and then we talk about mortality rates and the struggle on dialysis and hardships to the body and how you could even lose your opportunity to get a transplant when you're on dialysis because of comorbidities. So I just drop a few seeds. I would get some information here. They look like they're interested, give them a little bit more, but I would never ask anyone to consider giving me a kidney. I would share my story, and I would say, you know, my doctor suggested on the transplant, but the best way to do this is to find a living kidney donor. And if they're interested, they'll go, you know, I heard something about that, or tell me more about that. If they're not, and you'll know it right away, the conversation changes and you go, okay, I just got the clue that they're not really interested in talking about this. But Jim, I would even do a checking out of the market, you know, the guy's bagging or the gal's bagging, or even the cash clerk would just be, you know, hey, did you find everything you need? Just about. You don't happen to carry any extra kidneys here, do you? And I'd make light of it. And then a conversation would start. What do you need? And I said, no, in all seriousness, I need a kidney. I need a transplant, and the only way to get that right now is to find a healthy person who would be willing to donate a kidney. And then I would just see what happens. You know, sometimes they just wish you good luck. Sometimes they change the subject, or, you know, you're halfway out the door, but you can't stop. You know, we call it sharing your story, but you can't stop opening up. You've got to take any opportunity that you can to address the elephant in the room. And just to say, oh, I'm fine, thanks. Yes, I got everything I need, and leave. I mean, of course, that's just the market. I did it in the dental chair. I did it wherever I could. And I thought, why not practice on people I didn't know? I mean, it was it was simple. I'd never see him again, probably. So that's whether you're practicing in the mirror, practicing with strangers, and you'd be surprised how many people you know might act funny, and the strangers might be leaning in. So the 24 people that leaned in, 5 seemed interested enough to, and this was over time. This is over about 2 years. So little by little, you know, 5 would come out of the woodwork and just say, hey, you know, maybe I'll look into this. Maybe I'll call the transplant center. You have to, of course, give them contact information. And then they either could get through the screening, whether it was on telephone or online. Most of it's online right now, and get tested. But all 5, well, I should say 4 of the 5 were disqualified. The 5th one never showed up to testing. I was a little devastated for about a fraction of a second, and then I realized what a blessing in disguise that was. What if she didn't show up for surgery? So I thought, okay, I'm good with that. You know, it's interesting, Jim. The individuals that wanted to donate that were disqualified, they were more disappointed than I, or at least as disappointed as I was. And that even just somebody offering who wasn't healthy enough or young enough, you know, when I say young enough, maybe they were in their 75, 80s. But it's just such a sweet gesture. You know, it's just such a sweet gesture when somebody offers to do something so selflessly to improve the life of another. And the 6th one, you know, when I least expected it, came to my rescue, and I will forever be grateful for Mac, which is the name of my kidney, and the donor is Melissa. So Mac stands for Melissa's Amazing Kidney.
Excellent, excellent. How has your health been post-transplant?
It's been really good. I've been very fortunate. You know, there's a few hiccups right after transplant. You got to get the meds right, and you're constantly going in for labs, and um, there's just this calibration period. And I can't take medications for pain, strong medications. Tylenol is kind of my best friend. So as a sidebar note here, I was able to have my native kidneys removed the same day as my kidney transplant. So it was 6-hour surgery. But I was only this was at Mayo Clinic in Phoenix. I was only in the hospital for 4 nights. I did get readmitted because they put me on some pain medication. I don't remember what it was, Vicodin or something. And I was just so sick on it, they thought something else was going on. Yeah, it honestly, to go through that big of a surgery and I think the blessing of getting the gift overpowers everything else. So you might have pain, but you're like, oh my gosh, I just got a new lease on life.
Well, you've been talking to us about patient engagement, and first thing, I want to let people know again the link to our first broadcast. If you want to drill down on Risa's kidney story, is scrolling across your screen, and it's also in the comments to this broadcast. So, talking about patient engagement, you are the winner of the 2018 Celeste Castillo Lee Patient Engagement Award from the National Kidney Foundation. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, all I can say is that it was such an honor because, you know, I think we learn a lot from those that have walked this path before us. And, even you, Jim, you're just so actively involved. And when we receive an award, and that was from the National Kidney Foundation, when someone acknowledges our work, because we're volunteers, most of the work we do is volunteer, and we do what we do to improve our fellow kidney patients. And really, the biggest reward I get is hearing from those patients. It's sweet to get that acknowledgement. Don't get me wrong, and it makes me proud. But when my head hits the pillow at night, it's the stories that we hear from the patients we talk to that say, "Wow, Jim, your podcasts. Oh my gosh, the people you had, I learned so much." Or, "Risa, I read your book." Or, "Oh my gosh, your app, your program is really helping me find potential." That's what I think. That's the secret sauce that really makes a difference.
Well, I read a press release about your award, and they describe you as a fierce advocate and kidney patient who has battled kidney disease for over 30 years. I guess that dates us a little bit, but
We're older. We're
that's
old.
pretty good praise, in my opinion.
Well, I know that I wasn't sick for 30 years, and I'm 12 years out now. So I think the last time I was on your show, I was celebrating my 10-year kidneyversary, and now June of this year was 12 years. But yeah, thank you for that. But as I say, my engine is fired up for a number of reasons, and making a difference. If I could have helped my dad more back then, I would still do what I'm doing today. But yeah, there's so many people that can be helped.
Okay, and just so the folks know, tonight our emphasis is going to be on discussing Risa's new mobile app called Donor Seeker. And if you look at the banners that are scrolling across the screen, there is a link so that you can access information to that app. So, Risa, let's talk about your new mobile app, Donor Seeker. How did this app first begin, and how did it come into existence?
Yeah, so a couple years ago, I wanted to build a better mousetrap to help patients find living kidney donors. As you know, got the In Pursuit of a Better Life, the ultimate guide for finding living kidney donors, the book. And there's about 100 pages in there. And there's some great content because there are examples of letters and scripts and tips, and just even some emotional things that we need to talk about, because this whole journey, and I don't want to forget to mention that, so I'll slot it in here if you don't mind. This whole journey could be full of a lot of false hopes and broken dreams, because you think you have a donor, for example, and then they get disqualified, like I was describing to you. And then you feel like you put all your eggs in that one basket, and you may be on the edge of needing dialysis, or already on, but you're hoping to get off. And you're thinking you had somebody, and all of a sudden you're told, no, they can't proceed. So it's important to recognize that whether someone is disqualified, or you're sharing your story with somebody and they change the subject, it doesn't mean that they don't care about you. If they're changing, I've had really good friends change the subject on me, and I'm thinking, wow, I thought they'd walk to the end of the earth for me. I never asked for anything. I was just telling them about my situation. And I thought to myself, it's not that they don't care. It's that they don't have the skills, the tools to communicate on that level. It's a little too intimate to talk about those types of things, and they're uncomfortable. So that's just what it is. But in a sense, it's a blessing in disguise that they can't continue the conversation because they're not perhaps the right person I should be talking to anyway. So they save me a little bit of time, but not to take it personally. And when someone's disqualified, it doesn't mean they're not healthy. It just means they didn't qualify and that they aren't a good candidate, and they could have changed their mind. And all you hear is they were disqualified, most likely for medical reasons. But by all means, change your mind now. Don't change it on day of surgery or when you're getting wheeled down the hall. So yeah, I find that the process of going through when I say building a better mousetrap, you take a lot of time to read a book. You take a lot of time. There are some other programs out there, Jim. You know, I'm not the only game in town, but they could be an all-day program. They could be a 3-hour program. They could be a 3-hour, 2-hour webinar. Could even be an hour and a half webinar. But I wanted to develop something that was easy to understand and that someone could watch, because watching videos instead of reading is, we all like to just turn on the TV, right? Hey, give it to me. Let me see what I get out of this. That's why YouTube does so well. And I wanted to give them something simple and direct and inspiring that they could not only watch it in less than 15 minutes, but they could start to implement it in less than 15 minutes. So there's 4 videos, and each one sort of addresses, it takes a little deeper dive, if you will, on this whole process. So the first video, would you like me to describe the videos? Or do you want me to hang on?
Give me a chance to ask a couple more questions, and then
Absolutely.
we'll get into some details.
Absolutely.
We've mentioned the Transplant Strong platform. Talk to us about the relationship between Transplant Strong and the Donor Seeker app. And the link, everybody, is scrolling across the page.
Thank you for reminding me that we need to go back to Transplant Strong and how this program was developed. So the videos were created. They have professional voiceovers and HD video, and this was all on the Transplant Strong platform. So this is an online program. Let's start there. It was birthed online on a dedicated page through the transplantstrong.com website. And then I realized, gosh, how many people, how many patients are depending on their phone? Now, you can look up a website on your phone, no biggie. And people were getting onto the website, and the feedback was phenomenal. But I thought, how many times are you on your phone and trying to kill time, like a waiting reception area, trying to wait for the doctor to see you, or waiting in line for something? You could be pulling this up maybe even before you meet somebody for coffee. Oh, let me review that one video real quick. Just jump right in. Yeah, but the Transplant Strong website is where I birthed it. And the 4 videos then grew into a complete resource section. So that's where we started, and we started putting this together in 2019. And we then moved on to the app. Okay.
I wanted to emphasize something else too while we're talking about the app and websites. This is a free app. Is that correct?
Yes, it's important to mention that it's a free app. I don't want anybody to have to be dissuaded from learning because they'll have, yeah, it's free and it's iOS or Android. You just go to your app store and type in Donor Seeker and it will populate.
So that's my second point. Streaming across the screen and in the comments as we speak, whether you're an Apple user or an Android user, there are the links so you can download the application. The application is free. I can tell you personally that I have downloaded that onto my own phone. Takes about 2 or 3 minutes, really quick. So at any rate, you know now where to find it if you want to find it, and no cost.
No
This,
cost.
this is free to the user, which, you know, we support here at Kidney Stories too.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about the videos. It's my understanding that this application consists of 4-part video. It's a series that can be watched and put into practice in less than 15 minutes, so kidney patients can jumpstart their search for a living kidney donor. Can you tell us a little bit about the ease of use?
Absolutely. So the first video is an overview, and it invites the viewer to understand what they're going to be learning in this program and the importance of the content and how their goal of achieving a transplant can become more real if they are willing to talk about their situation. And it isn't just me, myself, and I talking about my situation, but encouraging other people, enlisting a team, if you will, encouraging other people to spread the word. That's what you're really asking for. That's the ask. But the first one is an overview, and that overview really underscores being actively engaged with everyone around you, everyone within your inner circle, everyone within your outer circle, and friends of friends. And that's why social media is just so wonderful. If we can create the content and give it to, you can't expect a friend to go, oh, let's see, I don't know if I got the content right here. What did Jim say about whatever it was? So if we could create something very succinct, it's got to be concise, it's got to be to the point, and there's got to be a bit of a heartstring to be able to tap from the telling of that content. You want to inspire people. It's not, oh, and you and I have talked to patients over the years that, and they are hurting, so I understand, but it's so heavy that someone wanting to help the heavy get lighter is heavy on them. It's almost like they get a monkey on their back listening to the story. So, we encourage people to understand the importance and get rid of the reluctance. Now, it's easy for me to say, but here I'm a professional speaker who used to have the biggest rooms I'd have, 900 people would be in a ballroom, but to tell somebody I had kidney disease was very scary. Even to talk to my doctor, to bring up to my doctor the second time, remember, I'm going to have a preemptive transplant after he rolled his eyes at me. That takes courage. So I want them to realize that there's a process of empowerment, that this is their life, and no one's going to care more about their life than they are. If they can learn the skills of how to communicate their situation and share it in such a way that isn't overwhelming, but is informative, and hope that people say, tell me more. So it's not a commercial, and it's not something that somebody would automatically knee-jerk feeling almost coerced to say, oh, yeah, sure, I'll help you. And then you never hear from them again, or the transplant center would weed them out immediately, right? So they need to get clear on their circumstances and their goals and talk up. We talk about this donor seeker platform as being an opportunity to talk up their situation, talk up their need to find a living kidney donor, and talk up and ask, would it be possible for you? I know you're actively involved. I think you have a Facebook page. If I script something for you, would you possibly share it? Would you share a post? I can provide you pictures. I can even give you a video. We can talk a little bit about the videos too. But that's number one, the first video. The second one is talking points. Okay, what am I actually going to mention? I don't have to get into a surgical seminar. I don't have to describe my polycystic kidney disease and the history of all the DNA and all that stuff. I could talk about my father passing early. I could talk about how it was really scary when I was diagnosed, and how my goal is to not follow in those footsteps. And I do it for him. I want him to know that his legacy lives on, and that we know more now, and that I can make something of his struggles. And so it's important to share facts and add, kind of layer the cake, if you will, with personal, inspiring, a little bit of constantly being curious. You hope the other person is constantly being curious. Tell me more. But facts and personal notes. Gosh, I hope I can spend more time with my grandchildren. Or, Betty and I really wanted to travel around Europe, and we're hoping that once we get through this pandemic and I get my transplant, that that's on my bucket list, and I really want to do that. It would be really hard to do on dialysis. The third one is, how do you share it? Okay, you told me this, Risa, and you told me that, and I get the importance, and I understand what I need to put in my story, but show me some examples. So we have some examples: a friend talking to a friend over coffee, a friend talking to one of their friends about their friend's need. And then if it's not verbal, we also give them examples of saying, hey, what would you post? What would you email? What might you send? If it's in letter form, written form, how would you do that? And of course, I told you in the book, we have a lot of letter examples and post examples. But I know I needed this. I think most patients need to see something happening in action. So it's like a role play, if you will, without the patient having to do the role play, but they can imagine, oh, okay, I'm watching his body language, I'm watching his tone, I'm watching how he's pacing the words, how he's pausing. It's just a way of saying, okay, maybe I'm starting to try this on a little bit. Maybe I could do this. And then the fourth one is getting organized. It's easy to just, okay, I talked to a whole bunch of people and I'm getting the word out, but we got to track who we're talking to. And if I'm building a team, because I'm asking people to, hey, would you join my team? Would you be part of my outreach team? Can you help me spread the word? And how many people are actually tracking who responded positively or following up with that person? Because if it's me or you, Jim, we're not going to call back Sam and go, hey, Sam, you know how you told me you thought you might be interested in this? You still interested? It's just awkward. But maybe you're talking to Sam, and hopefully, the conversation gets to a point where you might mention, hey, by the way, I called the transplant center. It doesn't look like I'm eligible. All right, a transplant center is supposed to call me back. I haven't heard anything yet. One key thing we have to remember, and we talk about this in the program too, is that if we're asking for anything besides help me share my story, when someone says they're interested, we need to ask them to please stay in touch with us. The transplant center isn't going to tell us if they call. They're not going to tell us if they're in testing. They're not going to tell us anything. We might hear that they're disqualified. That may be the only thing we hear, and get another donor. And that's why it's so important that we track and we know, because maybe we have one person, Jim, that sounds like, oh, they look healthy. And this has happened to many. Got all these people that are healthy that are acting as if they're going to move forward, and they get disqualified for reasons they never knew, but they got a really great exam. And they found out something they weren't aware of. But we need more than just one good person. We want to load the boat. We want to say, hey, my doctor said it's best, or my transplant center said it's best if I have some backups. So I have one person that I believe is testing right now, but they told me, because the odds are, you're probably going to have maybe 6 to 10 potential donors. Some people are really lucky, find it on the first one. And I'm envious of that. And I hope it helps. I hope that's the situation for most. But I think the reality is it's not. And so you don't want to say, oh, thanks for offering, but I've already got someone. You never say, I've got someone. I'm hoping that someone's in testing. I hope they work, but I've been told that I should have a few backups. So if you are interested, let's stay in contact, and I'll let you know when you can contact the center. Some centers are taking multiple, but getting organized, and we have a handout that is downloadable that can help them track who have they been talking to. Did they respond favorably? Did they say, what did they say? Did they say they're happy to post, or did they say they're happy to call the center? What was that conversation? We're not going to remember all the conversations. And even if we did, the story may change. And so someone on your team, ideally, would be able to be posting updates about their friend. Hey, my friend Risa, we thought we had a donor. Someone may be in testing right now, but we've been told that we need to have some backup. So I know that those of you that were interested and waiting, please contact me. or Risa if you want, and let's continue the conversation, because I think now's the time to do that. And we need to work the list without pressuring anybody, of course. In that last video, Jim, we have sort of a bonus. We get into the emotional arena of being reluctant to accept a gift, the offer. And this a lot of times this happens with parents. The child's offered, an adult child usually, they have to be at least 18, right? So they offer and the parents going, oh no, no. And they're wired. Parents are wired to protect their children, right? I know you were thinking about this if your son ever had it, right? You're wired to protect your children. You're never going to put them in harm's way. And so at the end of that video, the fourth lesson, we talk about the awkwardness, it's not really awkward, it's awkward more for the person who wants to donate, but the reluctance to say yes. And I kind of peel that onion, if you will, and I talk about, are we really the ones to deny someone to improve and extend our lives? I mean, are we improving and extending our lives so that we can be our best selves with our loved ones? If our loved ones want to help us, I mean, I know how much regret I have for not helping my father. I couldn't have donated a kidney, but there's so many things I think I could have done now that I know what I know. There are people today that I meet that say, I have horrible regret because my father or my mother didn't allow me to donate. They passed. I'm still here. I don't know what to do with this guilt and sadness and resentment. So I tell them, hey, leave that to the transplant center. The transplant center is going to do their due diligence. They're not going to put anybody in more harm's way than, everybody that has a surgery is going to have some type of risk. But trust me, they make sure they disqualify more than they qualified in getting through that. So I want people to emotionally go through that process of realizing, you know what, this really isn't my place to tell somebody they can or cannot do what the gift is in the giving, and you can't rob that person from the blessing.
Okay. I wanted to make another quick point. Not only is the application free, but the videos on the application are available in English and Spanish. Is that a correct statement?
This is correct. This is correct. Yeah, I thought that was really important. So I wanted to make sure, and some people would say they are English and Spanish and easy, language easy, easy, user-friendly, patient easy, but not so simple that someone would say, oh, this is, I'm back in kindergarten learning this stuff. And you do need to take it from some basics as well. But we take a nice dive into the programs. But yes, they are available in those languages. And the resource section has more videos. There's a lot of links, but there are even more videos in the resource section. And one in particular opens up to a whole post-transplant world of how to thrive, like you and I, how to thrive, not just survive post-transplant. And so I invite people, especially if they're going, oh, I'm kind of worried about this transplant thing, and I'm gonna have to be on these immunosuppressive drugs, and how am I going to live afterwards? Well, there's another series, I think there are 5 or 6 videos there that talk about how you can protect that kidney and how you can live your best and longest life, and your responsibility. We have a huge responsibility once we accept this gift. And we proudly accept it, right, Jim? We proudly accept it. We do what we can because we've been given a second chance. And especially when it's a living kidney donor, we owe it to our donors, definitely.
Let's drill down a little bit on the resource section of the application, which happens to be my favorite part of the application. You have a section about blood type compatibility. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's basically the ABO compatibility. It will link to a chart because so many people don't even know their blood type, and a lot of people that are sharing their story. And we don't want to discourage people that aren't our same blood type or aren't compatible. But it's important to know, like I was an O. I could only receive from an O. I didn't know that before I got involved in this process. I didn't even know I was an O. And anybody you talk to said, well, maybe I could donate. And if you have the courage to say, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. Thank you so much for even just thinking about this. You don't happen to know your blood type, do you? And they're like, no. I mean, we should be wearing bracelets. I just don't understand. And when we have our labs, when I've asked for blood type, and they're like, oh, that's expensive. You don't want to have to. I want to know my blood type. Oh my goodness. So yes, that's just ABO. The other section that is, and I know you're going to ask me about this, is incompatibility. That links over to NKR right now, National Kidney Registry. So it unpacks a lot of information. It's, you've got somebody who's not compatible, and they could get into, National Kidney Registry has done such great work. Everything from, gosh, the number of groups that they have combined, the chains that they have combined, the multiple transplant centers. For those listening that may not be aware of this, it's like if you have a potential donor who's not compatible, blood type compatible, or there's antibodies or something that's preventing them from donating directly to you, then you're matched with maybe a string of people, and the algorithm in these programs will figure out where your donor would donate to and who will ultimately end up donating to you. And so somebody else, kind of like musical chairs, if you will, but it's a fascinating process. And they talk about and have programs that are, I invite everybody to get on that website because it's so informative. And they have, as you mentioned, Jim, even the voucher program, which to me I think is just phenomenal. So you've got somebody who wants to donate to you today, but you're not really at the point where you need a transplant. So they donate now, and you're like at the top of the list. And when you need something, when you're at that stage, then your donor's already donated. So it's just remarkable what we can do these days. There's so many restrictions in our world. When I talk about living kidney donation and paired and voucher, I'm just so grateful some of these really important things do get passed, and they are allowed, legally allowed, and are saving lives.
Another cool section that's in the resource section of the application, facts, myths, and FAQs. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is just this is a handout that I had created. I wanted to kind of dispel some of the what is this like and what kind of tests would they be and who might be eligible and what's it like? How many days would I be in the hospital? And a lot of it goes toward the donor, not just the recipient. And it just sort of gives enough information so that if the patient themselves are not aware of the factual informations or any myths that may come up in conversation, that they at least learn this content. But it's a great handout to give to your team, because if the team starts opening up a conversation, they know this much about this whole kidney world that we live in, and they could really trip on their tongue or cause a problem or say something that's inaccurate. And so it's really best when technical and medical questions come up that you refer them to the patient's transplant center. Of course, that's always best, and any information that they have. But yeah, we just wanted to again, it's only a few pages, that we have some very common, frequently asked questions so that we could get into some of that content.
Books on how to find donors.
Yeah, well, here's one of them. I know you showed it last time I was on, which is
right. Hold it up close to the screen so people can see. That's Risa's book.
Let's Go Not Crooked. There we go. This is Implement a Better Life, the ultimate guide for finding a living kidney. This is available on Amazon. I'm sorry it's not free. Publisher charges to make these copies too. So yeah, we've got the books, but the thing I really like a lot, Jim, is the social media videos. So, and again, that's not something that is in the free zone, if you will, if you want something customized. But we've created some very wonderful videos that are customized for patients, so it could have their transplant center on it. It has their name, and it has contact information on there. And the risasimon.com website is where they can find out more about the videos. And recently, I created a really wonderful video that really could be used for anyone, and it is it's animated, and it's the cutest dog who is Did you see it at all on your
Yes.
page? It's Sydney's search for his owner's new kidney, and it's the dog who is saying, "Hey, you know what? My new owner, my owner needs a new kidney, and you know I've got all the dogs in the neighborhood barking it up, and the felines are, uh, crawling across their windowsills, and even one of the dogs offered to give one of his kidneys, and we found out nope, they only accept human kidneys. So could you help us spread the word?" And I just thought sometimes it's best where it isn't showing, the sick person or, just more medical content, that we lighten it up a little bit. And then, of course, the transplant center, the post would have more content about who am I talking about, what's their name, and who do you contact. So yeah, the social media videos, instead of somebody typing out a whole bunch of stuff, which you can still do, but people like to watch videos, like I said, and I know you agree with me. So just click here and oh, okay, now I might go back up to the post and get a little more content.
Correct. And last section I want to talk about is teaming up with donor advocates. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
And it's really a handout on that one section that just talks about, hey, how are you going to get organized? You can't just have people haphazardly sharing your story. So you want to enlist them as part of your team. They become your advocates, and they need a script too. So part of the homework assignment in the 4 videos is to script your story. And then we give them the talking points. They can select and choose and customize all they want. But when you get your advocate to be sharing the story, we need to give them a script as well. And maybe it'll be your script, and it won't be in spoken, by you, from you. It would be in third party. So, and they need the link. They need to know who to refer people to when they ask questions. So it is more of a handout in that area. Again, one of the, to me, exciting things in that resource section is the downloading of a certificate that the patient can print out and have proof that they took the donor seeker program. And it's a reminder, put it up on your mirror, remind yourself, okay, you have been empowered to share your story. And it should be a reminder every day when they look in the mirror that, yeah, I did this and I can do this.
Okay. Is it a fair statement for me to say that the donor seeker program was created to increase the need for awareness by inspiring natural conversations about living kidney donation?
Yeah, and I like the way, yeah, I'm going to underscore the natural conversations. You don't have to make it a serious, oh gosh, we need to meet. I need to talk to you. Can we sit down and have a serious conversation? It may be with a family member that you might need to do that. But casual, natural conversations is the way we want
All
to
right.
do that.
It's my understanding that several transplant centers, large dialysis groups are now referring patients to this fast track platform to help increase transplant opportunities that support better outcomes. Is that likewise a fair statement?
Absolutely. In fact, UC Davis has become, they're kind of our star community partner. So we have developed community partnerships. Again, there's no dollars that are crossing tables. We just want to get the message out. We want to build, we have this, what I'm calling a better mousetrap, this more concise 15-minute program that when people, oh, I don't know, I don't feel well enough, I go to another class, I didn't understand a lot. We want to give them something that's easy, that they can follow, that they can watch over and over and over again, that can be in their pocket on their phone. We want the process to be easy. So this is for their waitlisted patients that are going, how long is it going to take for me to get a transplant? We have to ensure that the patients understand, those that are hoping to get a transplant, all of you listening tonight, and those that you love that are in need of a transplant, we have some responsibility here. The onus is on us. If we're not getting the word out, no one will know how they can imagine how they can help us. We have to be our own best advocate and do it in such a way. Do it in such a way that people are not offended or feeling pressured or coerced. And it's very doable, but you're going to trip on your tongue. And that's why it's okay, practice in the mirror, practice on strangers, and use these tools and the great examples and the tips and the scripts and phrasing that we suggest. You go, oh my, that is a lot easier. I could just say it that way, or change it up any way that you feel will work best for you. It's got to be, again, from your heart. It's got to tap your heartstrings, because you want to make sure that the person listening feels a tickle in theirs.
Okay, and just so folks know, if they want more information, the website is scrolling across the screen as we speak. It's also in the comments. And Risa, you don't have any problem if people email you to ask questions. Is that also correct?
No, absolutely welcome to do that. By all means, anything I can do to help, for sure.
Risa@transplantstrong.com. All right. Before we conclude our conversation for the evening, is there any closing statement or comments that you would like to make? Did I forget anything? Anything that you would like to say in closing?
Yeah, you didn't forget anything. You're amazing. I think the world of you, and so appreciate our friendship and appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I think in closing, I'd like to connect the dots of where I started at the beginning of this interview. When I described my mother's journey and her family's journey to the United States, the struggles, the walls that were taken down, the miracles that occurred. Just when you feel like it's not going to happen, you don't give up. And my father, unfortunately, losing the battle, but struggling, trying to hang in there, didn't want to tell the kids, didn't want to worry the kids, and all those struggles. And it really has become the fire in my belly to help other patients, and it has given me a sense of purpose, but also duty to fight the fight. And I fight to honor my parents' struggles. I fight to I fight for kidney patients, because I don't want them to work as hard as they would without these tools. Um, I wish I could have done more for my father, so I'm going to give all that greatness to other kidney patients. And I don't think I'll ever, and you'll never, Jim, I know you well, will never stop doing that. I just fight for my Mac, for my donor, for Melissa. It's my duty to keep myself healthy. In my dreams and hopes, I'm hoping that Mac will last the rest of my life. Um, I don't know if that will be the case, but I know I'm going to fight my hardest and my darndest to preserve the function of that kidney, and fighting the fight. Sometimes we feel like we've given it all we've got. And sure, my mom and her parents, my grandparents would have thought that, and my father before he passed. But I know for certain that just when they thought they had given it their all, they fought again. They didn't back down, they doubled down. And there's nothing my father could do, because of back then there wasn't as much available. There wasn't even living kidney donation, and unless somebody was, there were twins, I think, that went through this. But I want your listeners to take advantage of the tools that you were so kind to share tonight, the tools that we've developed, that I'll continue to develop, that I'll continue to help our kidney patient community, because I'm living my best life possible. And I know that if they hook on to some of these tools, and not just mine, there's a lot out there, of course, I feel ours are pretty darn good. But if they hook onto these tools and they give it their all, and they feel that I'm going to do whatever it takes to get this transplant and be the best part of me for my family and loved ones, they are bound to have magic happen. And they have to keep that spirit up, and they have to see themselves across that finish line, because it is discouraging. But fighting the fight, that's really what it's all about. They deserve to live their best life possible. And this is what I hope for them.
Wonderful. Wonderful. What a great job you did tonight, Risa. I thank you so much for coming on and talking to us, and so much great information and help for people that are seeking living kidney donors. And I wish you every success with your new app, and your platforms and your books, and Oh my goodness, there's so much stuff in the comments, folks. You don't want to miss that. I'm telling you. I mean, Risa's been at this for a while, and I had trouble fitting everything in. So great stuff there. So we thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us about the Donor Seeker program and the application. I'm going to let you go now. I got to talk to the folks about our upcoming broadcasts, and I just want to say again, thank you so much for taking time. What a wonderful discussion tonight.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you so much. Yeah, really appreciate this opportunity.
No worries. We'll be sharing this broadcast around so people see it.
Excellent. Appreciate you.
All right. That's our broadcast for this evening. I thank you for watching. Let's talk a little bit about some of the upcoming broadcasts. Next week on the 28th of October, Lainey Iscobel, who's already writing me, by the way, Lainey Iscobel is with the PKD champion. She's a PKD patient and advocate. She recently wrote a blog for the PKD Foundation. Lots of interesting stuff going to be going on next week, so you don't want to miss that. On the 4th of November, Allie Dawson is with us. She's going to talk about her kidney story and what's happening with her. On the 11th of November, Rachel Rusama is with us. That's two U's in Rusama. Rachel is the spouse of a kidney cancer patient who has since passed. She's going to talk to us a little bit about her experiences with kidney cancer. On the 18th of November, and this is tentative because of Teresa's health, Teresa Diggs is going to be with us, fingers crossed. Teresa has had a heart transplant. Teresa has had a kidney transplant. She's a mom. She's very active. By the way, go to her page on Facebook. She's running for some kind of over 40 mom thing, and go vote for my friend Teresa. She's beautiful. She's smart. It'd be a wonderful conversation if we can keep her healthy enough to get here. Dr. Stenke is going to be on with us, Stinke, on the 2nd of December. We're going to talk a little kidney medicine. And on the 9th of December, we're going to be talking with Krista McCall, another kidney patient. On the 16th of December, Sharon Simpson Rose is going to come on with us, Rouse. I probably pronounced that wrong. Sharon is a very, very dedicated kidney advocate. Interesting things going on with that, interesting things going on with her life. Watch this space. You do not want to miss out. I'm giving you the Friday after Thanksgiving off. I'm giving you Christmas Eve off. I'm giving you New Year's Eve off. I know nobody wants to listen to a bald old man talk on those holidays. So, but I am booking people in January and February. I have some interesting things already going on there. So, keep an eye on us, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that the next time that we meet. So, for now, you have a good evening. Appreciate you watching, and have a good night. Take